What is going on, everyone? Sports Card Santa back again with another annual Naughty or Nice list for the sports card hobby. This one will be pretty interesting. It won't be as long as last year's one because the Naughty list could get pretty long if you talk to it all day, but I thought I'd keep it pretty light this year just to have a bit of a chat and talk a bit about some of the things that have happened this year. And obviously we can start with a nice list as we always do because it is pretty short within this space, but that's maybe me being a bit pessimistic. But the people that I want to give some shout outs to are the ones we've done in the past, the likes of AOH Sports and Sports Card Radio, because they've continued, to call stuff out and sort of hold the hobby accountable. And it's been really good to sort of see a lot of stuff happen this year that these guys got some credit for, in particular the likes of AOH Sports and him getting some, vindication when it came to the likes of the whole card porn situation, because he was somebody that was, often and still very much often pushed down on by many within this space because he often asked some really tough questions. And when it came to the whole card porn situation, he was somebody like myself that was sort of jumping up and down about some of these inconsistencies, some of the strange things that we were seeing from a card porn account perspective that many others were ignoring. And he, pushing back on that individual, eventually was vindicated by the fact that this whole card porn scam came to light. And it was sort of good to sort of see him getting that vindication. Like I said, people basically saying, well, hang on a minute, maybe you're not as crazy as what, these people told me you were. And it's sort of good to sort of see. And that goes on to the next point that I'm really happy to sort of see within this space, and why I think the whole hobby probably needs to be on the nice space, because on the nice list, I should say, because, we've seen a lot more pushback within the last 12 months and a lot more people being open-minded when it comes to various things, whether it be, pushing back on content creators doing some suspicious things, or, clearly being a puppet for the business that they're working for, getting paid for. And you've got people, very much clearly pushing back on that sort of stuff. Now they're pushing back on when they see things happen with certain businesses. They're pushing back when they sort of see certain practices happening on eBay pages. And whilst I'm being a bit general here, I'm talking just based on what I'm seeing, and I'm seeing a lot more people be open-minded within this space. And I think that's, a really good spot to be in. And it's not just with, pushback culture and all that kind of stuff. We're seeing a lot more of an open mindset when it comes to things like comps, right? You've got more people these days not, relying on, comps like they have in the past, and, playing pop reports against each other and all that kind of stuff. We've seen, a bit of a shift there, but I just think it's really cool to see, people, again, push back on stuff that we saw maybe 2 or 3 years ago that people were sort of lapping up, where you sort of had content creators talking about certain things. You had, pop reports and all this kind of stuff be put on this huge pedestal. And I'm repeating myself now on those two topics, but it's just sort of good to see a bit more knowledge, ingrained within the hobby at the moment. And that might be a bit of a poor choice of words on my part, but I'm sort of keen to hear what you have to say. In terms of somebody that I think deserves to be on the nice list with that same sort of mindset is SCVSportsCards, because he's sort of come out of nowhere in the last few months. And the thing that I like about this guy is the same things that many others like about him, and that's the fact that he's sort of come out of nowhere, but he's sort of freely speaking his mind. He's talking about, collecting and wanting to do things his way, and he's not doing what everybody else is doing, right? He's not following the social norms of our hobby. He's talking about, buying and selling cards and doing things the way he wants to do them and why he's successful doing that. And it's sort of refreshing to sort of see a young guy like him come out and do that, because so many others that have sort of come in this space that do the same things that he does, don't do it the same sort of way. They all follow each other, very sheepish in terms of the mentality that we're sort of seeing. And whilst that's an okay thing to do if you like to do it, it's sort of good to sort of see him say, well, F you guys, this is how I do it, and this is what works for me, and this is what could work for you. And I very much like the fact that he's also sharing that and documenting that for people to sort of see on a daily basis, because again, we need more of that. And whilst I don't agree with everything that he says, probably every other video I disagree with the position he's taking, but it's important to understand that that's okay. And that seems to be something that's been lost in this space as well. It's okay to disagree with people, right? You can agree to disagree. You can disagree with somebody and still want to have a beer with them afterwards, right? It doesn't have to be you versus me kind of mentality, right? If I disagree with something that you do, it does not mean I never talk to you again. And there's a lot of that sort of happened in this space as well, which goes back to that whole hobby mindset mentality that I had and mentioned a little bit earlier, because a lot of that mindset seemed to drill and be very pervasive within the hobby, where it was like, well, if you want to collect cards, this is how it has to happen. If you want to comp cards, this is how you have to comp cards, right? If you want to look at PSA pop reports, or PSA is the best, ignore the other graders, all that kind of stuff, right? There was so much of that sort of happening, and playing pop reports against each other and comps against each other, and ignoring this grader but using this grade, or ignoring leaf cards and ignoring non-game use stuff. There was all this sort of stuff happening, right? And it's sort of good to sort of see in recent times with the likes of SCV amongst many others, where people are saying, well, this is how I want to go about doing it. I'm going to be comfortable doing it. I don't care what you say. And it seems to be a lot more accepted these days. So again, keen to hear what you guys have to say on that one down in the comments below. But moving on to the naughty list, similar to last year, it's very bloody long, as you can sort of see over here. That list just goes and goes and goes. I'm not going to ruin your ears by trying to pull it all out, but it's going to be pretty light this year. We won't talk to them all. I'll probably just go through the cliff notes of those that deserve to be called out, and that's going to be starting off with the likes of card porn. I sort of mentioned that whole situation when it came to AIH Sports a little bit earlier, but someone like him very much needs to be on this naughty list because he is the epitome of everything that's wrong within social media for sports cards, in my opinion, because this guy was essentially at the forefront, right? And he was somebody that was meant to be on a pedestal, was meant to be the hobby watchdog, as he often referred to himself as, and used his position to sort of cause a lot of grief and caught a lot of people out unfairly so, quite a lot, as we did talk to on this channel. But what sort of happened and sort of came to light with his whole situation was that he was sort of using that influence to almost extort people, to pressure people into doing the things that he was doing. And whilst he was trying to white knight for the hobby, he was sort of scamming people in the background, and none more so than the information broke by Darren Revell when it came to the whole Michael Jordan game used jersey that he tried to incorrectly match to a game in photoshopped images, forged the whole charity, tried to fool an auction house and all this kind of stuff. And the investigations around this whole situation are still ongoing, but he's very much clearly at the top of this list because, you know, you're talking about insane stuff that this guy went to, insane lengths that this guy went to try and rip off individuals within this space. And what was sort of very disappointing to sort of see around this whole situation was the second those accusations came to light and Darren Revell broke that story, people basically came out of the woodworks and said, well, there's all these other scams that went on that this guy tried to ruin me with, and now I'm going to talk about them. And whilst it was good that those scams came to light, my biggest pet peeve is with the whole situation, as we've talked to, you know, a few months ago, was the fact that why do these people wait until that scam to happen for them to come to light? And that was very disappointing to see. And that goes to what I said a bit earlier about, you know, the mindset within the hobby, because some of that still exists and some of that still needs to change, where you've got people sort of biting their tongue and not talking about certain things because they've got fear of being exposed or they've got fear of being called out. It's like, well, if you know scams are happening, call it out. And that whole card porn situation, while it was cool to see this guy get called out, it was very disappointing to see people withhold information, you know, until more scams came to light. It's like, well, no, this guy scammed people with an 86 Fleer box and, you know, fake sealed. He sold fake MJ cards with fake orders on them. It's like, well, how much of that could have been prevented if you came to light a bit earlier with your knowledge of what this guy was actually trying to do? And it's just, you know, very, very disappointing. But I'm obviously happy that this guy was caught, and I'm happy that this guy's at the top of the list because he very much needs to be there. But I'm really keen to hear what you guys have to say as well. I think it's good that he was called out, but very disappointing to see that mindset of people only waiting till things come to light for them to come out of the woodwork. It's like, no, guys, talk more, and maybe you can prevent more people from getting scammed like you did or you almost did from this, you know, scumbag individual. And now, keeping those comments in mind around the positivity posse, we can talk about, you know, the next two people on the list because they essentially were part of the same crew, and that is the sports card therapist and also Shaiway Vlogs, aka Shaiway Vlogs. These were two individuals that were very much against and vocal against, you know, shill bidders and, you know, scumbags in this hobby quite sternly. And it turns out both of those were committing things in the background. You know, you had Shaiway Vlogs come out and shill bid on his own cards that were consigned at auction, as we did talk to in the past. And then we also had, you know, the sports card therapist basically win cards that he didn't pay for, which a lot of people tried to cut him some credit for. But, you know, what basically happened with him was that he did those things. He put out an apology video that he basically then deleted because it was, you know, quite poorly received. It had comments in there around card ladder and stuff. Do check out my other videos for a bit more context on the whole situation. But from that pushback, he went ahead and deleted literally his whole social media presence, which raised a lot more questions than answers and doesn't look good, you know, through a lot of people's eyes, including my own. You basically, like I said, had this individual shill bid on items that he didn't pay for, right? And they weren't his own cards. Yet you can't cut him some slack because that is essentially what shill bidding is. And then the whole situation is made a million times worse by the fact that this guy's gone ahead and deleted so much content in his whole presence, hundreds of podcast episodes, right? And like I said, both of these guys were, you know, in the whole positivity posse crew that all of a sudden did things that they were preaching against, being so vocal against, being so vocal towards watchdogs, being so critical of watchdogs, yet they were talking about this sort of stuff and then doing it behind closed doors. And it's just like, obviously surreal situation, and it just makes you wonder how many more people are out there that have these, sponsored platforms that are now doing the same things themselves. And, that's the reason why they're both on the list. And I'm really keen to hear what you guys have to say down in the comments below. Obviously, if you want more detail, do check out the exact videos on those guys, but I thought they were worth putting on the list. And talking about, doing things and then basically dipping, you had Card Porn, get caught, then dip. You had Sports Card Therapist, get caught, then dip. You had Shaiway Vlogs, get caught, then dip. Well, you can add Justin Gamble to the naughty list and to the list of people that have dipped as well, because as we talked to in this video over here, he was an individual that very much looked like he was scamming people with repacks. And without, going into too much detail, it was something that basically he was selling repacks for crazy prices. And every time people basically asked questions about it, the price of the floor, the ceiling, the average consistently changed, right? It was very vague. It wasn't transparent. The repacks weren't sealed and it looked pretty bad. And a lot of people agreed, obviously, which is why the videos did so well. What was so strange about that whole situation was he clapped back a little bit, tried to put the fire out, but then he made some other comments that very much looked like he was, full of crap, basically. And, to make the whole situation even more alarming, like I just said, those guys dipped. Well, this guy was basically putting out daily content for over 200 days in a row. My video drops and he all of a sudden stops that. And it's another clear-cut example of somebody being in the hobby purely for money. And that's perfectly fine. We've talked about that before. But it's all the other stuff around it, right? You can make money and not rip people off. And it's just a shame to sort of see there's so many people are out there doing exactly that. They want to make as much money as possible, and they don't care about the person on the other end of the deal, which is, very sad to see. And it's almost like a sign of the times. And, I hope it's not the new norm. And I don't think it is, because I think, it's just a social media element. But it's something that you're sort of seeing happen a lot. And it's just disappointing to see that it's happened with so many people that have these big platforms. And I'm really keen who you guys think I should have added to the list for social media influencers on the naughty side of things. Now, in terms of businesses, I think Arena Club should very much be on this list as well, given what they did for repacks recently and the way they paid for content creators to go about spruiking their product. But the main business I want to focus on is Topps, because it's pretty clear cut of what's happened over the last 12 months and them as a business and how disappointing it's actually been. You've had backdoored cards, duplicate cards, QC issues, missing inserts from products, more backdoored cards. It's like this consistent, wheel of crap from them, right? It's never ending. And, one of the things that's very disappointing about the whole situation is the lack of transparency. Now, for some things they've commented on, and I've rightfully given them credit for, but those backdoored cards that I definitely reference too much, you guys will get sick of hearing me talk about this, but the backdoored cards from, 6 months ago, they've not said anything about. And there's people out there that will say, well, Topps talked about the duplicate cards. They've talked about the backdoored cards from the last couple of weeks. What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is, they're cherry picking what it is they want to talk to. And that's why they're on the naughty list. I can understand, there are issues when you come in as a business and there's things for you to fix. They've basically taken over the licenses and soon to take over, the NFL, NBA and all that sort of stuff. So things might get worse. And I understand there is teething issues, but the whole cherry picking of what you want to talk to and what you want to be transparent about is what is very concerning. And that's why they're on the list, because those cards that were backdoored 6 months ago, it very much looks like that those cards didn't make it into the product, which is basically them fraudulently selling you something as a customer because it has missing cards within it, right? There's cards on that checklist that by all reports are not within the product itself. So them not talking about that raises a lot of concerns about the future of this hobby, in my opinion, because just because Panini were bad, and that's what people say as well, Panini were bad, cut them some slack. Well, just because Panini were bad, it doesn't mean we can cut Topps any slack, right? They've come in and promised the world, and they're doing crap like this, and that's not okay. So that's why they're on the list, and I'm keen to hear what you guys have to say down in the comments below. So, thanks for watching. I think 2023 was a fun year. I'm really keen who you guys think should have been on the nice list, on the naughty list. I know I kept the nice list very light this year, but that was by design. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.